Hello and welcome back to the ministry. And today is more of a food for thought message. Really just coming from a place of the attitude of gratitude that we need to really just stand in, especially when it comes down to being grateful for the fact that we have a roof over our heads. A lot of us just don't have that full understanding. When you don't understand that, then a lot of people see the world from the perspective in which they are in, and they don't understand that there are people that don't have a home. You have a comfortable place to sleep at night. Even if the place is uncomfortable for you to be, you still got a place to sleep at night. There are people that don't. Homelessness is a huge epidemic in the world, and for some it's just as it relates to city by city and community, one area to another, all over. The biggest issue is there is nowhere for people to go. What is the true problem? Gentrification. With gentrification, you have communities, old communities that have been standing for years, that have had, let's just face it, minorities living in these communities because it's where they could afford to live. I recently was looking at a training where I was talking about here in Maryland the redlining and how redlining was created. It was literally zoning populations of people that, of course, were of a minority persuasion, that they must live in certain zones, and they come outside of certain zoning that they could have issues, whether it be trying to go to school, trying to build businesses, so on and so forth. They like to keep certain populations in certain areas by making it nearly impossible for them to move into better neighborhoods. But at the same time, tearing down more and more neighborhoods that, yes, people aren't living there, but you're not making it better for the people that are living there. You are making the neighborhood better by improving the housing that's in the neighborhood, and then you're elevating the prices to a degree that the people that are living there can no longer live there because the property taxes have gone up to a range that they can't live in those areas anymore, which means inflation of rents, inflation of there's some things that is not protecting the people that are living in these areas. So in turn, they either are forced out of their homes. Some really do fight, and they're forced out of their homes. They're forced into shelter systems. If the shelter systems are full or they're not taking them, they're forced into situations where they're either living with family or they're living on the street. And sometimes I've even seen recently video footage from a young woman. She was dealing with homelessness so chronically that she went from one state to another state thinking she would get a better effect. And it was almost like it was worse at that place. And certain things that should have been a provision for people that were in these states were not there. And they had to fight to get into certain type of homes. And it was sad. It was very, very sad, because in this particular situation, it was a young woman that had a baby. She was literally sitting there with an infant that was anywhere from 4 to 6 months. Can you imagine being on the street and trying to take care of a baby. And she talked about she had been in such chronic homelessness that she had two different pregnancies prior to that and lost both children. The only child that she had was the one that she had with her at that time. And it wasn't that she lost them due to the system taking the child. No, she lost them due to being attacked while being pregnant. She lost them due to being robbed. She lost due to one case. She was taking good care of herself as best as she could. She just lost her set of twins. And I'm going to even say this. From a spiritual standpoint, she was dealing with a spiritual element because she lost her first child just before it was born. Actually, I think she had the first child. She managed to get into an apartment complex, but the apartment complex didn't keep her. They did something to force her out of that apartment complex, which left her to be on the street, which in turn something happened to cause her child to become sick and die. And the reason I say that the death of the second two children that she lost while pregnant happened because of a spiritual thing, because they died the exact same date of the loss of the previous child. Now, some might say that's a coincidence that the children that she was pregnant with died on the same date. But if you're a child of God and you understand spiritual things, you understand that's a spiritual effect. Just like homelessness is spiritual. Homelessness is a state of poverty, lack, and oppression that a lot of people, when they spiral into it, it's almost nearly impossible to get out of. Big businesses buy out these other businesses and raise rent in areas. Due to these things, new corporations, they build new homes. They bring in properties, the property value in the poor areas that just were getting by at the price that was attainable are kicked out. Just as I said, once they're out of their homes, they go to Section 8. They end up on a long list. Let me tell you something. I remember being in a scenario when my father was looking for Section 8. We went together to the Section 8 office. And I remember it was a woman. Because of the way that they set you up in social services, there are booths. Sometimes it's two rows of booths. You have one facing one way, where the person on one side is the actual provider of the service, and on the other side is the person receiving the service. In this case, I'm on one row with my father listening to what is being said as the proctor is giving him the instructions as to what he needs to do in order to be put on a list. I'll say 5 to 7 cubicles over on the back side of the opposite side, a woman, I hear her. To this day, I remember what she was saying. She was telling the person, I know I got my Section 8 voucher. My family member did not give it to me. I just received that voucher. Can you honor the voucher that I have waited on a list for 8 years for, so that I can get a home? And all the person on the other side of the desk could say was, no, you missed your slot. All we can do is give you the paper to fill out again so that you can be put back on the list. When I tell you, I'll never forget the way that woman wailed. She was crying from her soul in a way that would hurt any normal human being, because you could feel her soul's pain at the thought of having to wait years to potentially be put back on a list, to wait for a home, when the reason that she didn't get it was because she had to transition from house to street to this to that. And the first place that she put her address down, she wasn't even living there no more. That's why she had to contact the people back. And then the person said, oh yeah, I forgot, I needed to tell you that you got this. But they waited 2, 3, 4 months to try and get in touch with her. Because people lose phones, people lose addresses, people lose ability to contact them. They don't have email. Family members don't know where they are, don't know how to get in touch with them. Some of them do know where they are. They just like, oh, it came with the rest of the mail. Let me just put it on the table. And then, but that's a person's life in the balance because of one piece of mail. One piece of mail. Months, years. Family is willing to take you in for a moment, but even that, you can end up overstaying your welcome. Going from house to house, shelter, because I remember years ago, I was talking to a woman and they talked about, just go to the shelter system, that they have a 90-day program that they'll put you into housing. Yeah. I'm going to tell you from understanding, one, it's not a 90-day program. Two, if they do put you in a 90-day program and they just manage to drop you into a housing, it's more than likely they're going to try to push you out to the outskirts of town, into the neighborhoods that you wouldn't want to be in, where you have gangs, crime, looting, the worst neighborhoods. They're going to put you in them first because they know that there are vacancies in those areas. I remember one time my dad, when we were searching out houses, there was a post in the newspaper, and I told my dad where the location was, and he drove over there, and he pointed out something. He said, you see that trash can right there? That can is a representation of something in relation to drug things. Now, me, I would have never known that. I was young at the time. It was early in the process of trying to find housing. I had to have been about 16, 17 years old. I actually wasn't 17 years old. I had to have been 18, 19, somewhere around there. And we were trying to find housing. Making calls. Because, see, people think, oh, you just lazy. You don't want to. People, when they see the problem is there, they want to stop it. They will make the calls. But these landlords may not approve. If they can't get an approval for the amount of money in which they have to pay, and most landlords are shiesty, they not allowing people to just pay whatever they want. Some of them are hiking the price up, making them pay exorbitant amounts, which means they are barely even able to feed themselves after they pay these weekly rents or monthly rents. Because I know in New York that people will get rooms for weeks, meaning from by week to week they could determine whether they want to keep you or get rid of you or not. And the more that they build up, the more the property value goes up in certain areas, and they push the minorities to the outskirts of town. to the worst neighborhoods, because what their point really is to end up pushing all of the people into the same areas. But the thing about it is they want to get rid of the middle class capacity. So you end up with people that were in middle class that could actually afford to live in basic housing ending up being pushed out into counties, cities, and areas that really most people wouldn't want to live. It's disgusting. And some people, if they can't manage to balance themselves or find a way while they're searching and seeking and trying to find a better place, and you got family in your ear talking about you need to get out of here or blah 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 blah, and they're trying their best just to find a balance. How can I balance? How can I do this? How can I find some place that's worthy of living? Because you go from living in a actual house that you can afford living in, and what they offer you looks like a dump with rats, roaches, and all kinds of nastiness, and the landlords aren't taking care of it, and it's real slummy places. And you've been pushed out into these areas, and anybody that has value for themselves is going to automatically say, oh heck no, I'm not going to live there. And some people, your family members, going to look at you. How dare you say no to it's like, you need to figure out how to get that taken care of. You at least you was offered something. So because they have what one might consider pride in themselves to be like, I'm not going to take just anything, they end up overstaying their welcome. Their family starts to push them. They end up being pushed out into the street. And because they look too put together, because they just got pushed out in the street, they can't get assistance from nobody, because people see them when they ask for a handout. People are like, you look too well put together. You must be scamming. You must be this. You must. Just try and get a couple of dollars so they can eat. They trying to get themselves a couple of dollars so they can get that go to that job interview that they trying to get hired for, so they can get some more money in order to be able to pay for a better place, so that they can have some receipts to be able to get into a living space. But a job won't take them, and then if they don't have a good address, or worse yet, they end up with the address of the shelter that they're staying in. No place will take that address, because everybody, these jobs know those addresses. And if you have shelters that operate in certain ways, they will call. I've heard of people literally saying that these shelters will call their jobs, and they've lost jobs because the shelter called for reasons unbeknownst to them that they don't understand why they would even have the right nor ability or reason to call their job. I've seen people that were on their way out the door of shelters because they had gotten a job, they had gotten their pay stubs together, and they were bragging about, I'm almost out. And it's like being in the prison system, that the one person that they see get ready to leave gets jumped just before they get out, and they set them up in such a way they lose everything. They lost their job, they lost whatever credibility they had. This one girl, she was bragging so much, she said that I got 2 jobs and I'm about to be out of here. She talked too much and she lost both jobs and ended up stuck there. And they end up stuck in perpetual cycles of drug and alcohol abuse, because they don't know what else to do after that. Every opportunity they think they were going to get out of, and they end up slipping into a deep depression because the people around them But there's hope because God is working. God is working it out in the Word. You can read out in Leviticus 25, where Leviticus talks about the property and the land being given back to those that lived on it in the first place. Maybe they have to work for a period of time in certain areas, and with the proper ethical people that are giving them the true understanding of what it is that they need, they can actually gain the ability to buy back their property, because people will purchase their property, either allow them to live on the property and or work for them in business in a certain way that they will get the ability to almost earn their way back into their home. There are time periods. There's land divisions. Leviticus goes into deep preparation to help people gain understanding on how to live in their houses, how to gain back property, because there's a certain period of time that the debt is forgiven and the house must be given back to its original owner. This is what restoration truly is. Homeless people aren't out there because they just went crazy and want to be out there. Some of them are out there because their situation got so bad, and then they picked up some type of habit while they were in the midst of that situation, and their lives broke down. And as they're trying to crawl out of this crabs in a barrel scenario, surrounded by even worse situations and people, they get pulled even further down by habits, by situations, by scenarios, and it becomes saddening. It's not particularly their fault. There's a spirit behind that. So the best thing I can ever tell you is to pray for people that are in these situations. Because as you pray for these people, you will see shifts. Watch the way your government is treating communities, sectors, laws, law groups. Look into real estate. Gain understanding. I literally listened to a conference, and one of the proctors that was speaking, she talked about how spiritually there are gatekeepers, and I've been hearing about this for years, that there are spiritual gatekeepers, especially when there are red lines zoned, that the gatekeeper has created a line that you cannot cross. But spiritually, it's a gatekeeper that's not letting you get from the poverty side into the rich side, and has pushed you out of the middle class. And you have to literally fight in the spirit to gain control spiritually of the land. And that's not an easy fight. Not by any means. But we as children of God are meant to conquer land, territory. And you need to pray for it and understand what it is to pray for those territories. And there ain't no joke. I mean, seriously, there's no joke. I remember when I left and went to New York. I'd been there about 2-3 weeks. And I was emotionally drained and drawn and trying to figure out what in the world the Lord was trying to show me. I had a bag with me, God. I may always make sure that you have what you need. And inside of this bag, I opened it up at 3 o'clock in the morning and pulled out a piece of paper. It was a printout for spirit mapping. Spirit mapping is literally locational understanding of a map, city by city, in a state, gaining understanding of the spiritual history. Did people die in this area? Was it an Indian burial ground in this area? Was there a war that occurred on this landscape? What kinds of things happened in this area? Because see, the thing that people don't understand, if a war occurred in that area, there was death in that area. And you may notice years go by, something happened in 1843, but you seeing in 2020 that this area is actually the area that you see the most crime occur in today's society. Why? Because if you've ever seen old TV shows, they do it, but they do it in such a subtle way that you wouldn't really even think about it like this. But now that I have the understanding spiritually of what this is, you see those shows where they talk about in previous lives, people lived in a certain area and the land kept repeating the same set of events over and over. It just changed for the time frame. Every 20 years it would change. It would be a different set of people, but the same set of occurrences for that season, for who's living in that area at that time. If there was a horrific deaths in that area, it would be the same thing that would happen through crime in the present day. Understanding these things, understanding the idols that were being used in that time. Indians in New York, there were certain grounds that used to be Native American areas, and they would pray to spirit totems. And those spirit totems were the covering for those areas. Not God, little gods and little idols that they prayed to over these areas. And then they would then in turn make sacrifices, literal physical sacrifices of children, families, so on and so forth. And then you're wondering why in these areas there's an uprise of crime in these specific areas in today. Because what's going on in the spirit? The same spirit is still in operation and it's locking people in these areas. And then on top of that, you got people that are red zoned into this certain area. They're pushed into impoverished neighborhoods. And now you got these spirits that are in operation in that neighborhood. People are ending up dying and through gang violence. And they were never even supposed to be there in the first place. But because of the spirits that were in operation, you see what happens? Homelessness is way deeper than just, oh, this person done lost their house. Boo-hoo. It's a spiritual thing. It's a spiritual warfare over the land and seizing land. If you don't understand it, look into it. Look into the understanding of it. I had to gain understanding. I suggest anytime you're moving from one location to another, you do a spirit map. The main reason I haven't done a spirit map on my next location because I don't know exactly where I'm going and I don't know how long I'm going to be there. That don't mean I ain't praying. You need to pray wherever you go, wherever you move, because does it not say in the word that wherever your feet may tread, you shall have the ability to have a place there. You can have land in that place. Not only can you have land in that place, you can also have full protection to walk in all places. For the Lord covers you in your comings and your goings. You have a right to be there. And if you were physically born in that place, you have full and complete right legally to move and have land in that territory. But the spiritual fight over the land, it's ridiculous. I've heard this from other people. Even a coach that I listened to, she made the point of saying that somebody told her that when she was seeking out property, it said that the hardest thing that you can ever do is try to acquire a piece of property in neighborhoods, because if you are a spiritual person, you have the understanding that due to the gatekeepers, it's almost nearly impossible to get in to a neighborhood. But you got to have a spiritual group praying hard for you to get into a certain area, especially if you're doing it by yourself. Now, we're in a season, especially now, where you're dealing with and seeing spiritual restoration of land. Sometimes this restoration comes through financial wealth transfer. Some of it's going to come through weddings and marriages, because the access to the living location will come through the person's spouse. Maybe it's the woman that has more money and the man does not. Maybe it's the man that has more money and the woman does not. But through the security of the marriage, the woman will have access to every piece of property that the husband has. And it's an automatic entry point for a door for land ownership for the person that is added to the deed. But you must be strategic. Homelessness can be broken. But even the Lord said in His word, there will always be homelessness. So you must pray against it. Pray into the land ownership and pray into restoration. This is Taj McCameron for the ministry. Much love, faith, peace, and blessings. Until next time, bye-bye.